I'm reading Ken Carey's book entitled Return of the Bird Tribe, and this is the introduction. With the acquisition of language, a vast range of perception is disregarded. A child soon comes to believe that if there is no word for something, it does not exist. Sensory input that is not reinforced is de-emphasized until eventually the child accepts the cultural viewpoint with all of its biases and underlying assumptions. In the process, something valuable is lost. The benefits of language are obvious. Without it, each new generation would repeat the mistakes and forego the learning of the past. Without it, our race could not advance. But the view of ourselves and our world that comes to us through language is but a thin sleeve of the multidimensional reality we inhabit. This larger reality has fascinated me since childhood. I have never been without at least some minimal awareness of it, and through the years there were always those odd moments when my mind would relax into a form of perception that brought me fully into its strange and curious domain. Often this perception would come forward to help me establish a rapport with a plant or an animal, deeper than what I found possible when viewing things from a cultural perspective. Although my language-oriented mind would later remember that these incidents occurred, since my experiences were non-verbal, I rarely remembered much of their contents or detail. It was not until one day in the winter of 1978 that I made my first attempt to verbalize what I experienced during one of these states. In bed with a cold and fever, my thoughts had drifted into a calm, meditative silence. Passing moments pooled together, relaxing into one. Distinctions between inside and outside began to dissolve. On a level beyond words, beyond the surface froth of passing events, on a level deep in the ocean of being, I experienced myself as energy, and my body as an intertwining of sun and soil. Was this the awareness of the newborn and the very young? Everything that touched my senses, every nuance of sound and light, every object in the room, felt as intimate to me as the lungs through which I breathed, as inseparable, as personal. Insights did not come as flashes, but as things I had always known, truths so obvious it was hard to believe I could have forgotten them. But I had, and might again. Could this awareness be expressed, articulated, recorded in words? Language only limits perception when its terms are taken too seriously. Taken lightly, the attempt to find words to record our impressions can help us to perceive more fully. Verbalizing this awareness would challenge me to clarify my experience of it, yet its very nature seemed to defy definition. To translate it into symbolic characters on sheets of paper would be like trying to channel a river through an hourglass. The very impossibility of the task intrigued me. I put a new ribbon in the typewriter. During the 11 days that followed, I wrote my first book, The Starseed Transmissions, and The Third Millennium. But differences define the spokes of a wheel, and without them our world would not turn. To fully awaken the earth requires each of us, a blade of grass, a gull, a passing cloud, a squirrel, a dolphin, an oak tree. Spiritually, our race is superior to none of these. Yet this truth is misapplied if it causes us to overlook our potential or underestimate our uniqueness. For better or for worse, we influence the earth more than any other species. More often than not, our historical influence has been destructive. Our survival and the survival of countless species now hinges on making the changes in consciousness that will end this cycle. The starseed material addresses the habits of perception that lie at the root of destructive human behavior, and the moment-to-moment awareness that can bring our influence wholly into the realm of the creative. Except for the occasional accessing of individual memory records, the awareness I experienced while transcribing this series did not differentiate between I, you, and we. It was unable to comprehend our over-literal use of these terms, and seemed to regard language rooted in such rigid divisions of self as little better than primate babble. Whatever success I have had expressing an awareness so antithetical to the implicit assumptions of language would not have been possible without the help of intermediary forms of intelligence. Over time, I came to think of them as informational beings. What they truly are is not so easily labeled. They describe themselves as condensations of consciousness in a sea of universal being, temporal embodiments of eternal qualities, ever-changing in form and content, yet consistent in the qualities they represent. Introducing themselves to me in the opening chapters of the Starseed Transmissions, they explained, the eternal being we represent is able to focus attention on many things at once. We are that attention. We personify eternity's interest in time. Our individuality is defined by the unique nature of the space we enter, but our intelligence flows from a common source, and we remain unified with that source in essence and in spirit. Although your human individuality is more specified and relates to material levels of manifestation, it is fundamentally no different. The chief difference between us is that you have forgotten the singular being at your core, and we have not. We have come to remind you, humans are not isolated entities. You are cells in a universal whole, intelligent cells, now dormant, but with mind-brain circuitry designed to reflect the thoughts of the creative spirit at the source of your life. As you release the fictitious beliefs that stand in your way, memory of these things will return. You will recognize eternity's thoughts as your own, and activate historically latent features of human design. You will see that creature and environment are inseparable, and that environment does not stop with an ecosystem, but extends to include your star system and every galaxy resting in the universal sea. This explanation left little doubt that I was in contact with a form of intelligence far in advance of my own. Its description of itself and the others of its kind did not quite fit the stereotypes typically associated with angels, but over time it became clear that this was indeed what they were. As their primary spheres of influence are not of this earth, it is equally valid to describe them as forms of extraterrestrial intelligence. Those who have sensed the presence of such beings at various times in their lives will no doubt find this Starseed series more accessible than those who have not. My hope is that the readers in this latter category will consider this material nonetheless, accepting its stated origin as a working hypothesis, and in the manner of objective science, postpone conclusions until the subject is further explored. The information contained in these 4 volumes helps us view ourselves and our world from perspectives few of us have previously considered. It paints a portrait of a human race now poised upon the threshold of a breakthrough for which evolution has long been preparing. Collectively, that breakthrough still lies ahead. Individually, it begins the moment we raise our eyes above history's illusory divisions. The distinctions between self and other we once took for impenetrable walls then reveal themselves as filmy veils allowing passage to and fro, and we see ourselves reflected in all that meets our gaze.